Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. It is a hectic day already in the markets, but I got the legend himself, Big Beat of Wall Street here. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Lots going on today. I thought yesterday was going to be a slower day. It was a slow day. I think the rest of the week's going to pick up. We still got a little bit of the Fed, a little bit here the rest of the week. But I'll be honest with you, lot of rugging going on around the country here, whether that's in crypto or whether that's in stocks now, believe it or not. So
Yeah.
let's get right to it, Hondo.
Absolutely. Overnight we've seen all commodities take off. I think unrest sort of leading the way. Would you say, Steve? People are sort of just feel beat up. I don't know about you, but I feel beat up by the news these days.
Yeah, no, it's very simple. If you believe in this president, you believe in what he's doing, you're not buying gold and silver because that's what you buy gold and silver for, is protection. And gold and silver is pushing higher. Platinum's pushing higher. Everything's pushing higher. Commodities are pushing higher. And I saw where Scott Bessent, the new Treasury Secretary, is now already blaming regulation as the reason that inflation is going up. The finger pointing in the blame game has already started.
Yeah, we're gonna
Even
see.
100
We've
days
seen
in
a
the
lot
first
of
year.
it. I feel like the White House has turned into watching like a Senate committee meeting, right? It's they come out and the first thing they do is not on the subject they're going to talk about. They just berate the media about the other side. So that's tough. Gold hit an all-time high again, man, at 29.54. So again, I keep seeing everything. 3,000 obviously inevitable at this point. Do you start to think, though, with the way everything is? I know you were looking at more of a fade at 3,000. You still in that fade at 3,000, or you
We're going
thinking
higher than
continuation?
3,000 now. I believe we're going to go higher. I believe it's gonna get ugly. I think we go higher. Yes, most definitely.
Okay, that's why I wanted to ask, because we've been both saying 3,000. Watch for a pullback. I'm with you there. We'll definitely get Peter Thomas on either later in the week or probably early next week to talk about it. Do want to mention before we even get started, we have a couple of great guests on today with us at 10 a.m. We have Todd Bubba Horowitz, a 40-year veteran of the CBOE. Guy is absolutely great to listen to, has great insights, has his own trading company, and he's going to come talk to us at 10. And then at 10:30, we have CMT legend Mark Petrino. Again, a guy that learned under Steve Cohen, ran his hedge fund and investments, now a big shot over at Benzinga. And they're both going to be in today. He's going to talk a lot about China. We got to talk about that a little bit. Alibaba, how about the way the world changes, right? Today, Walmart down, Alibaba up.
I think that's the key. We've been talking about the stock pickers market, and if China and the United States can get along, then there's your answer, right? Palantir pushing here a little bit, 109.69. Look, you're right. We talked about Alibaba. I liked it back better under 88. That's where I thought that we were going to go start to move. And there we go. So now we've run. It's stock pickers market. I don't know how else to tell people this, right? It is what it is. I don't like Alibaba up here, though. I think Alibaba's made its run.
That's what I was about to ask you, and I was about to point out. I have it ready to go. I want to talk about We Ride a little bit, Steve, because this is a chart of exactly what we've been talking about don't believe the hype, don't get the FOMO, don't jump in when something's gone up 40, 50, 100%. And you can see yesterday it dropped from a high of 44 back down here to 33 pretty quickly here, and it looks like it's going to continue its slide today. So just keep in mind that those ones that just jump up tremendously, don't be someone that's trying to jump in at the last second. Let that come back to a decent entry for you. So Walmart, Baba, when it comes to there, were you surprised Walmart got hit this hard, down about 5% today on their earnings?
Not one
and
bit. We've been
earnings
talking
beat.
about it, right? We've been talking about it. I think you're probably going to ask me next, is this a buying opportunity now with Walmart? No, it's not. I think Walmart starts to slip a bit. Let's let it build up a wee bit before we do that. Look, the inflation is not just hitting the consumer. It's also hitting the sales people too, right? It's the Costco's of the world, the Alibabas of the world are going to hit too, which we're seeing that now, right? And if one of the things you saw the Walmart CEOs talk about was, he said, look, we're going to be hit hard by Mexico and Canadian tariffs as well. So this is not good, right?
Right. He pointed that out. He pointed down they're giving lower estimations for their 2026 growth, expected only at 3 to 4%. And again, when you start to look at what they're trading at, it becomes problematic. They did another one that was a positive for them, but I think is a negative for the economy. They talked about gaining high income shoppers, that they're seeing a lot more of the big money walk in. We heard that with Costco during their earnings report, right? People were buying Wagyu there and everything else. So it's there. Oh God, Senator Warren urges the DOJ. Well, the good news is they're not going to. So she can get on her bully pulpit and yell what she wants to yell at the sky, but no one's listening to Senator Warren anymore. So yeah, Walmart, got hit here. I thought that was an interesting one. I know you wanted to talk about Palantir too, Steve. You buying this dip there? Hegseth came out and said,
buying the dip. To me, I see this all the time on the show, right? That you want to know when gold prices are high, go watch commercials on CNBC, Bloomberg, on the TV shows, right? If you see gold commercials coming on TV, that's time to sell. Why? Because those companies are trying to sell. What happened over the last week and a half? The Palantir CEO. Now, listen, I was buying Palantir in the 30s, okay? When I was pounding the table saying, I like Palantir because I think Palantir's got a great product. I think they're going to win government contracts. All the cool things are going to happen. And it did. They all happened, right? We knew that they were happening. And when those earnings came out, we saw it, and they began to explain about that, right? Okay. Then he goes on a road show and says, hey, guess what? I've got all these cool things going on. I've got this government contracts. I'm still winning. I'm doing everything else. Goes on every financial show. And then in the middle of all of this, he says, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to raise money. I'm going to sell some shares. He pumped the stock up to sell the shares. Now,
yeah, he's going to sell 1.2 billion in shares. So
1.2 billion in shares. 1.2.
It trades at 202 times earnings. That's ridiculous. Also, I will say valuation. So
no, I'm
not
not
back here. Anymore. Yeah, I think I'd have to see it come all the way back down towards 100. I think this becomes like a Disney to me. At under 100, I like Palantir. At over 100, probably not. Right?
That's right. Yep, that's right. Psychologically, I think Palantir is still a good company. Nothing wrong with it. Still got the contracts, still doing things, still growing. Will those contracts be cut back a little bit? Yes, because the Doge is going to cut back in the government, especially in the Department of Defense. Now we just found that out. But for me, no. I think I'm not a big fan of Palantir right now at this price. I like this company. I don't like the price.
And I will mention he's been a pretty big seller of his stock because last year he sold 40.7 million shares also. So, it's not like he's not one that's paying taxes. You've pointed out the guys that are sometimes paying taxes. He's taking his cash out basically.
Correct.
Here. So interesting. As you mentioned, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth came out and said 50 billion in cuts. Did that surprise you at all? It shows that Trump's serious about this Doge in my mind. Because most people thought he would leave defense alone, right?
No, I think he's going to cut everything. He's going to cut on that. I think he's going to cut the White House staff. You asked me, and that's already been cut down.
Well, he eats McDonald's for half his meals. You don't need as many people in the kitchen for sure.
Well, it's the guy who out of the 29 days he's been in the office, he's been 9 days on the golf course. So the very thing that he's talking about with previous
Biden,
he's doing the exact same thing, right? As my grandfather Ewan used to say, do as I say, not as I do. I need to see more reality. I saw him yesterday coming on it's not a bang on the president day. But he said that he had $80 billion in savings already, cut that down to 55 billion. And then when they went back in to look at it, it was less than 30 billion now in savings. So there's not a lot of savings going on here. And I think the courts will probably outrule him on some things where he also will be even more. So I think it's all bluster. I don't think it's any actual.
My last takeaway is his fights with the states have to stop also that states have sovereign rights and whether or not he likes them. So he's going to find himself in some battles with some of these states for sure. Tick is pretty much neutral right now. Advanced decline is slightly positive at 400. I say that's in a sort of neutral spot because once we open, that will move 1,500 one way or the other. VIX down at 1553. Not quite low enough for me to start buying some calls there yet. But anything below 15, I definitely would start to look there. SPY and QQQ both look to be opening on the downside here. QQQ down about 13 basis points, SPY down about 22 basis points so far in the open. Like we said, commodity. We are seeing a flight to safety, right? Bitcoin up at 97,721, Ethereum up at 2757, gold at 29.27. Your silver broke 33, Steve. That seems to be the line in the sand right now to keep an eye on right now is 33. I think if we can hold 33, it makes a quick jump to that 35 and above there. Oil up here, Steve. Brent up at 76.25. WTI a little low. I'm noticing that spread between Brent and WTI seems to be spreading out, widening out a little bit. Is that weather related usually?
Yes.
Okay.
Weather related and refinery related. We talked about refineries yesterday. The refineries are not picking it up. The crack spread out of that is widening. I think I posted on Twitter yesterday all of the distillates out of what comes out of a barrel of oil. Yeah. And I'll tell you, people are complaining about gasoline prices. Gasoline prices are still going to go higher. Sorry, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't get as upset on gas because it's one of those ones that has been, when I was a kid, gas would go on, would get cheap at $2, $2.50, and it'd be expensive over $3. And that's pretty much where we're still sitting, at least where I live here in the Midwest. I know it's not for that for people in California, but NVIDIA up a little bit in the pre-market here, though. Steve's struggling to hold above 140. I know neither of us are worried about it. I just want to point out that sort of has been that line that it's been unable to really close above that 140 very often. It keeps on getting knocked down from that area. So keep an eye there. Most of the Mag 7 outside of Tesla pulling back. I will point out Tesla's at that 360 that I pointed out. Important level there. It did get above it yesterday. It is slightly above it right now. So Tesla does have a chance to see a little bit of a continuation here. It's doing what I wanted to see, holding above 360. A hold today above 360 would give me a firm belief that we have upside back up towards that 400 level. So what I'm keeping an eye on here. You looking at anything else on the Mag 7 today, Steve?
Yes. Apple, actually, believe it or not, they have a new product. So do people like that new product? It is a new, smaller, a more compact Apple phone that is strong enough to handle AI. Okay. Cheaper phone, $599 is not a cheaper phone. It's not $1,000, it's not $2,000 phone like we're used to dealing with, but it is a interesting concept. So are they struggling with the sales from last year with their top quality ones? We've talked about this, right? Android, and Apple phones, people are keeping their phones longer. They are better phones, right? They last longer. The Gorilla Glass that are in it. If you want to talk about a company, I think you should talk about Corning, which is GLW. If you don't know why it's GLW, it's because it's a former company used to be called Glassworks, and that's why. Yeah. Corning, this company makes Gorilla Glass, and their new Gorilla Glass is very strong. Yeah, that's why you're not seeing as many of those little small little companies fixing your phones. If you break your phones,
you got to try hard at this point.
You got to really do something dumb.
Yeah, I haven't gotten far enough to cancel my insurance yet, but I'm getting there to where, I don't have the fear that I used to have of it. Like you said, I know that I don't use a screen protector anymore. Those things are sort of gone by the wayside. And as you mentioned, I've had my iPhones about 3 models back and still working
right now. Boeing CEO says Elon Musk is helping us a lot on Air Force One jets. If you don't know, for those of us, I have been on Air Force One several times, a little over 100 times. I can tell you that is a very, very cool. There we go. I can tell you it's a very cool plane, but there's not one plane. There's 2 planes. So for those of you who don't know, it's only called Air Force One when the president steps on the plane. So if you don't know that, it doesn't matter what plane. It could be a Cessna. And if the president steps on it, becomes Air Force One. All right. So What he is
Interesting
referring
fact there
to.
for you, Steve, is here in Ohio and Dayton, they have the Wright Pratt Air Force Base where all of the old Air Force Ones are available to be walked through, all going all the
Yeah,
way back.
the old Whitney Pratts. Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say that, and of course the Reagan library, also I believe has one too as well, and I believe they have HMX-1. HMX-1 is the helicopter for those of you who don't know, the Sikorsky. There's a new Sikorsky, by the way. It's interesting because Trump was the one who cut back at Boeing in the first administration of his first administration. He wasn't the one that ordered the new plane. He cut back on that plane, right? So it was too expensive. And now that he's back in there, it's being built, and he will be the beneficiary of.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
yeah,
that,
he like you said, he is the one that actually put the order was put in last time on his watch, so to speak, and he
yeah,
changed some of the guidelines. Interesting to see that. I mean, they sort of went off on Boeing Elon and the president just a day before, basically said that they don't know what they're doing anymore. So interesting to see that connection there. Nvidia nicely up this morning, as we talked about, as we look at the sectors of the SPY as we walk into the open here. We're about 15 minutes away. It is a mixed bag today. We're not seeing any sector really run away to the north side, but also not anything really getting wrecked like we saw yesterday. Chips a bit of mixed bag today. Nvidia up, broadband and TSM down. One I do want to point out, Intel continuing to slide still here. So, again, moved up a lot last week on the news that maybe we'll see a buyout by TSM and AVGO. Lost about 6% yesterday, down about another 0.5 percentage point here today. So Intel getting hit a little bit here on that news.
How about my favorite one of all time? I like lately is Unity. Unity Software reported their earnings today, up 12% here. It's ticker U. Just letter U. Unity does gaming and AI software. Look at that pop this morning. Ooh, that's hot.
And they're the second ones because we saw Take-Two take off last week after their announcements with GTA. Unity, the folks behind Assassin's Creed and other titles. I'm not sure what other titles. Well, they're Call of Duty.
Affirm. We're now seeing Affirm up a little bit here. AFRM.
Wow.
They are announcing a partnership. Looks like with a multi-year partnership with Shopify.
Nice. I'm not a big buy now, pay later guy. I think that it sets us up poorly, unfortunately.
We're seeing reports that Nigeria's central bank now is holding their benchmark.
Steve, do have to bring up Baxter International up nicely today, up about 7.37% after their earnings. They crushed it. We saw their revenue grew only about 1% year over year, but they had an EPS beat of about 6 cents per earnings. And their kidney care sale was completed. And most of the things they were worried about from an insurance standpoint on resulting from the hurricanes, they are based down in your area. They have settled through all of that from the Hurricane Helene, so everything working well there. Also saw their CEO retired. They have a new interim CEO, but Baxter up about 7.37% on that news here today.
Yeah, I mean, healthcare has taken a pretty big, I would say, a beating in a lot of ways. I will say that I mentioned on Schwab roughly about a few weeks back that one of them that I really liked was Intuitive Surgical, is ISRG. I liked it right back there around 580-ish when I started talking about it. Today it's over 600. I do like this now. I think she continues to run. They have the new DaVita machine that can handle surgeries. So Intuitive Surgical has been another nice winner for me. So Trump is now calling for a balanced budget now. He's now saying balanced budget now. News is
Quantum
moving pretty
Services up about 6.14% after they had a good earnings yesterday. So some of the earnings that we saw yesterday continuing to move up nicely here. PWR is Quantum Services. Yesterday they were up about 1.5% after the earnings late last night, and now up about 6% today. Definitely looking like they're strong. NXPI, another chip manufacturer, had a nice move up yesterday, as we know, on their earnings, 7.31%, continuing to move to the upside today. I did have some updated news on NXPI.
So, yeah, he is now saying balanced budget now. Let's give it a shot. Lots of money coming in from tariffs. Do it. I wrote that on Truth Social. We're now seeing Bitcoin now at 98,000 here, 98,746 now. There you go.
So NXP, they got upgrades from Mizuho, Citi, and Truist. All of them about 260 to 290 in that range. So NXPI moving up on that news today. PDD, which is Timo's parent company, is definitely getting a sympathy play here, moving up nicely, about 3.59% here, back up towards all-time highs, or 52-week highs, excuse me, on PDD. So looking pretty good. Lam Research, another one up nicely today, 2.95%. Again, they got a bunch of upgrades overnight that I saw. Put them across the bottom here for you. Susquehanna boosted them to 125. So at least 6 brokerages raised their price targets on them. Biggest one, like I said, was Susquehanna going to 125 here on Lam Research. Analysts see an upgrade cycle for their NAND chips benefiting Lam, and that they're positioned to gain from the industry shift to NAND chips with 200 plus layers, requiring the advanced manufacturing tools that Lam Research provides. So definitely looking good here, moving up on that news. There's been a few. Devon Energy moving up nicely today after their earnings yesterday. Again, another one that we're seeing a decent amount of upgrades today come across the targets. Barclays moved up to $44. Morgan Stanley, $51. Bernstein's 48, Goldman Sachs 52, Truist 44, JP Morgan 48, and Susquehanna 52. Susquehanna seems to be the most bullish across a few of these analyst calls today. But
yeah,
Devon Energy,
Susquehanna has always been very bullish on the energy sector. They have a lot of stocks in those, so I can totally see that. But I will say this much: it's hard to be a bull in the energy sector when the prices of the energy are going up. But not at the same level of the stock price. A good example of that would be Mr. Warren Buffett himself, right? With Occidental, if you look at OXY,
it was moving. Too.
He bought more. He bought more of Occidental. At some point, I mean, Mr. Ham, who is I think at some point we can start to see a pullback here. I think on Occidental, OXY.
Yeah, up about 5.5% over the last 2 days. I do see the Wolf has just adjusted a price target to $78 on them.
Oh my goodness gracious! Jim Cramer now tweeting, he's not abandoning Walmart, PDD, or JD. Should move up. Jim Cramer now posting that. So
PDD is already up 3.79% on the day. What do you mean he's not bailing on it? That doesn't even make sense for him. And again, most of the Chinese stocks were moving up in sympathy plays as Alibaba had some really strong earnings. Alibaba's biggest takeaway, quite honestly, is still the fact that that Jack Ma was seen shaking hands with, President Xi there. So that definitely has them moving up. They also saw their cloud revenues move up. I did have Baba's info here. Alibaba, there we go. Their revenue slightly exceeded expectations. Their e-commerce growth and the international e-commerce grew 32%. They saw small growth in China itself through Taobao and Tmall, about 5%. Strong year-end sales was very good. They do something called Singles Day, and their extended shopping festivals led to a 26.6% 8% sales rise across those holiday periods. They also talked a lot about their cloud intelligent unit that grew 13%, cementing their role in China's AI race. Their own QWEN 2.5 AI model outperforms DeepSeek in their market testing. So we'll see what that does. And again, their Apple partnership was talked about on their earnings call. Also, Alibaba to power iPhones in China with AI solutions, the same way they see them partnering with other companies here in the US for Apple. So Alibaba moving up.
EU's trade minister now says that we can see here LNG and soybeans are in areas where we can cooperate between the United States and EU. So we've talked about that with LNG. We've talked about that with soybeans for sure, because soybeans is a huge export to the EU. So that's interesting there.
I do want to point out, if you were listening to us yesterday, Steve said if we got above 450 on nat gas, it was time to short it. It did pull all the way back down to 418 from that level. So again, Steve nailed it again. That 450 level is just too tough for it to hold that, Steve. That's what my quick takeaway for this winter. I think nat gas, you got to look at it sort of seasonally. Yes. And what we've seen is 4 spikes up to that 450 level, as you can see on my daily chart. Each time it's taken a significant pullback here. If you were listening, it's down 5%.
Well, nat gas has a perfect storm, and that's the best they can do, right? I mean, you've got trade wars, tariffs on nat gas and LNG, liquefied natural gas. You've got a very cold north, and you got issues in Ukraine and Russia. So this is a perfect storm for LNG and natural gas to go sky high, and yet still struggling at a million. I will say this much: if you pull up a weekly chart, let's pull up a weekly chart on nat gas. Let's go back and give history lessons. So as Jimmy Buffett would always say, if you go back and you look at times when, in 2022 was a good example of that, right? When that happened, look at that $7, $8, $10, right? I think with that million BTU, I think you're looking at a perfect storm and not getting back up to those numbers. So
yeah, I mean, basically outside of COVID, it's really never been able to hold above this level.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to say to people. And I think we need to be very careful. Now, the only thing that could really send it sky high right now is if there were cuts in natural gas exports around the world, not just the United States, but exports from Russia, which Russia can't wait to export oil and natural gas.
Yeah, they're not going to slow down if they can help.
They don't want to slow down. So I think we've really hit a kind of a high here in nat gas.
Yeah, like I said, if it spikes back up to 450, I would short it again personally. It has been a rinse and repeat for sure this whole season. And like I said, we've hit it here, that's now the 5th time that we've told people that. So make sure you're listening to that. Steve nails all of these commodities for sure.
Let's talk about crypto. I mean, your game here, Solana. We were buying that 2 days ago on that huge dip. I still think we get back to 180 pretty quickly. We're at 175.26, up another almost 4% here in this early trade.
Yeah, I'm up $10 on the position almost exactly from where I entered. I entered at 165, so very happy with that trade. I said I'm still looking for that 200 level personally as the thing. Don't get me wrong. If it spikes above 180 today, I will probably take profits, as we've talked about, with everything being discussed, everything sort of going on. I'm quicker to take profits, but I like it back to 200 without a doubt. Bitcoin, you were a little bit more nervous there than I was. Still hasn't broken out of its zone either way, quite honnly. It's been I'm very, very, very tight zone.
I'm still long Bitcoin. I mean, most people know I sold quite a bit at 98 too. I spent some of that money on Solana. I spent quite a bit on Solana. So I like the move here.
Yeah, and in general, though, again, I would need to see this break above, 98,750 for it to be a bullish move that I think breaks the trading range we've been in. What we're going to start to see is leverage is building up on both sides here, so we will see an explosive move come up, sooner than later here. Shake Shack, Ron just pointed out, up on earnings. We said that yesterday. Again, you called that one right out. You said Shake Shack would be a winner. It is up 14%. Wow, that is a move. I wasn't expecting that big of a move, Steve. I
No,
don't
not
think
me.
you were either.
But I think we talked about this. I said I liked Shake Shack here, and I liked it to
expansion, growth. They have the big word. You brought it out. You looked at it even before earnings and called that out. And look at that move again. You got to listen to what Steve says here, guys. I'll be one though. I think that's a big move right now. I want to see if it can hold this move. I'd be more looking here at this point to short that like We Ride and some of the others, but I'd want to see how it plays out over the next half hour. We are open here, Steve. We are open. Tick is negative 100 off the bat. Advanced decline hasn't really moved yet for me. It takes about a minute for it to update here on TradingView. QQQ's first move to the downside. RUT opening up down 24 basis points. Dow Jones Index opening up even worse, down 38 basis points here. Let's take a look at the early morning pumpers to see if anything's moving. So Alibaba giving back a little bit here on the open again. Not surprising to see
your buddy
that.
Jim Cramer's going to the tweet deck, man. He's hitting it up hard. He says Carvana said let it come in and then buy it over the next few days. He likes Carvana.
That's another one you nailed, CVNA. I always think that that's a bank. Whenever I look at it, for some reason, I have some bank in my mind. I
do not like Carvana.
TNV, that's what it is. Again, another one. If you were listening to Steve yesterday, he said, "Are people buying cars right now? No, not with interest rates where they are. Not with what's going on. People are holding on longer." You can see the first moves here are definitely negative to the downside. 261. This was trading at 290 yesterday. So again, if you were listening to Steve, down 7% here. Got to point that out. Nice little call there, BigBeat. Love it. Etsy starting to bounce back a little bit here. I wanted to see if I had that on my watch list for today. I want to see if it would continue the upward move after bottoming out yesterday. We know it took the big loss, up about 2% today.
SMCI getting taken a beating here, down 6%.
I have that on my watch list because of pointing out again, everything that seems to get wind seems to pull back, right? We Ride was the big one. This is one. I also have TEM, Tempest, now down 10% today. Wow, that one's moving
Alibaba now
inside here. But Tempest AI was up tremendously yesterday. I saw people talking late in the afternoon. They were going to chase it. Man, that was a mistake. Look at that pullback again. One that hit 92 on Tuesday here, now down at 77, down about 9% here. I think it's going to fill this gap down to 74. So I'd be a buyer at 74, not lying. If it fills that gap, I like it to then rebound from that level. It'd be the full, 100% retracement. I'd be happy with that move there. Walmart coming back a little bit here, now down 4.75. So we are seeing some buyers early here in Walmart. Steve says he's not trusting it, going to let it settle down a little bit. Inflation's still going to hurt them without a doubt. Palantir down about 5.5% here. Again, bouncing back a little bit here since the open. So maybe some institutional money jumping in, Steve, to buy that dip. Since it was right at the open, you think?
I don't like it. Still don't like it.
I don't like it. I was just wondering if you thought it was more institutional versus retail buying that little dip there.
Retail.
Retail. Okay. Let's see what's still moving up. NXPI trying to break through 253 here. Got above it earlier this morning.
There you go, boys. President Trump says we're going to go to Fort Knox, as the fabled Fort Knox, to make sure that gold is there. If their gold isn't there, we're going to be very upset.
So won't everybody else. NVIDIA here struggling again. That 140, man, just can't seem to hold above it. Up a little bit here, about 37 basis points. Apple, that you talked about, moved to the positive here on the open, Steve, up about 28 basis points. And I see Microsoft just went flat here. It had been trailing earlier this morning. Amazon getting hit a little bit here, down about a point, or now down about a point and a half almost on Alibaba's move up. So Alibaba is winning. Walmart and Amazon seem to be getting hit a little bit here today. I do want to take a quick look at the sectors.
Tick down
here.
700 here. Ouch.
Let's see. Rates moving down pretty well today, Steve. We see the 10-year coming back down towards that 4.5 level. That's good to see. Some of that blow off from the last couple of days moving downward. Man, all 11 sectors of the S&P are down so far. Biggest loser so far is consumer staples, like we talked about. Walmart's the one leading that drag down about 1.18%. Healthcare looking to go positive. I did see some healthcare was moving up earlier today. I had some of them in my watch list here. I know that Elevance had been moving up. I don't know if it is still.
Some big numbers that I saw this morning that I did not like was Philly Fed manufacturing numbers. Those come in at 18.1, Howard. 18.1. It was 44.3 in January. Anything under 50 is contraction.
It's contraction. 18. Anything under 25 is basically, yeah.
It's depression down time there, boy. I mean, that's not good.
Yeah, I was going to use the R word more than that. Wow, Garmin getting hit pretty hard here today, down about 2%. Another one that had been a pumper yesterday. So again, these pumpers seem to be reversing a little bit. One that is not reversing yet, TTD Trade Desk, one that Steve mentioned when it dropped down here. I asked if he was a buyer at 84. He wasn't. Now down at 76. I got to ask, I guess, again, are you a buyer at 76? Is there a level in the world that gets you into TTD?
I think in TTD is when you can take your charts and shove it up your behind, because they don't really work on TTD, right? I think the problem with TTD is the actual what's going on with the company itself, right?
Yeah. Who
is advertising right now? Who is spending advertising dollars? And we're not seeing that right now. There's no catalyst for that.
You said, there's no Super Bowl, there's no election, there's nothing that drives revenue, which
that's right. And I don't think so. Now, if you pull up a weekly chart on Trade Desk, I will tell you that, could we go all the way back to maybe the 50s? Yes. I think that's where you buy, is in the 50s.
Okay, well, there you go. That's the answer I was looking for. Let's see what's pumping so far here, Steve, this morning. Switch this over.
Bitcoin holding above the 98,000 handle here.
Hasbro on earnings here, Steve, up 10%. One of my favorite companies. I do like those toy companies.
One of the things that I like, that we talked about Hasbro, right? I mean, it's not Barbie doll, it's not G.I. Joe, it's not all the things they make. It's the games. We talked about this. Monopoly, all of these games on your phone.
And video game, Monopoly Go, all those things they're doing a lot of stuff there. I will say Legos for them is just huge, right?
Legos is huge, yeah.
That they're just, I've seen collectors, I see people doing these things, those stores. But they had an EPS beat of 33.94% and a revenue beat 7.25. I'll get a little bit further into their stuff. And like you talked about, look at this. Hasbro is launching imaginative Play-Doh Barbie play sets and licensing collaboration with Mattel. We know Mattel was up on their news the other day, right? So look at that.
Yeah,
I love it. Banding together to keep it going. But a nice move up there. Let's see what else is the big pumpers so far today. Hasbro, the winner, up over 10%. LKQ, I'm not familiar with them personally. LKQ, up about 6.36% here.
All right, you got one. I don't know this one either.
Oh, wow.
9,000.
And of course, the name is LKQ, so it's not even going to help.
Okay.
They're an automotive aftermarket supplier.
Okay, well, a 9,000.
So just had earnings, but an earnings beat by them. Not familiar. Nice move up. Just broke through their 50-week MA for the first time in a while. Let's get that back to a daily chart. Big move up, though, about 6.57% here. The other one that continues to keep moving up, Steve, and I didn't really talk about it yesterday because the news is confusing me a little bit. GDS Holdings Company, which is a data processing company. There's been rumors that they're going to do a U.S. IPO. They're not going to do a U.S. IPO, but they're a public company, so I'm a little lost in this whole world. Have you been following?
Oh, they can spin it off. It can spin off and go to other exchanges. There's all kinds of cool things that they can do here. I don't really know the story here behind them. But with the stock going up like this, I don't know. That doesn't seem like an IPO to me.
Yeah, it's been a 3-day pumper. That's what I mean. And I hadn't been able to find news for 2 days. I finally saw news, and it was about an IPO, and it doesn't even say here that they're an ADR. So that's what confused me. Usually, if you see an ADR and they want to do a US IPO, I understood it, but not in that circumstances. So I was a little confused by that one. But anyway, you look at it, up almost 20% here today. They are continuing to move to the upside, Steve. Tick continuing to move to the downside here, about negative 200, advanced decline approaching negative 1,000. Bitcoin trying to broach 98K here. So it is starting to get towards an area where you could see some short covering on Bitcoin again. Anything above 98.7 will cause some short covering here. So beware of that. Gold trying to run to an all-time high again, 29.36. I think we might see another all-time high today. We've seen it, 3 or 4 times over the past week here, so don't be surprised by that. WTI and Brent continuing to move to the upside so far here. As I look through, BABA now up 12.25%, so continuing to move to the upside. Like I said, some sympathy plays there. Baidu up 4.71%.
Probably JD.
We look JD up 8.83%. NEO was up earlier. Let's see if they still are. NEO up 2.51%. PDD is up also about 4.59. So China is definitely all moving up at once as sort of tariff talk cools down and everything there. Banks continuing to get beat up, Steve. JP Morgan down at around 277 here, down almost 80 basis points. Bank of America trying to go positive here. We know yesterday we saw a lot of major investors who had lessened their positions on Bank of America hit the news wire, had them down a little bit. Wells Fargo down, MS down, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. So in general, banks getting hit here more today. Not surprised there. E-commerce, as I said, mixed bag. If you're coming out of China, you're in the green today. Most of the American and even Melly down a little bit here. So Etsy is getting a little bit of love after a rough day yesterday. Wayfair is another one that's doing pretty well here today, 1.45% up. They had been hit down pretty hard yesterday after their earnings came out. So they had dropped down as far as $45, picking up a little bit. Walmart down 6.5% right now. Costco getting hit here, Steve, down about 1.69%. Target down 1.42%. So we continue to see a slide across the board when it comes to retailers here in the U.S. Chips are moving mostly to the upside, with broadband and TSM being the two major ones. ARM got hit pretty hard too overnight, down about 1.22%.
Tesla's down to the $2 here.
Yeah, tough. Like I said, that 360, it's been a tough zone for it to get across. Same with Nvidia with that 140. We've seen a few things. We've seen Bitcoin stuck in a range. We've seen Tesla sort of stuck, unable to break north across a range. We've seen Nvidia unable to break north across a range right now.
CrowdStrike down 3.5% here. Interesting there. The Dixie now 106.74, still slipping here. So we need that dollar to continue to slip. We talked about that yesterday with Steve Flanagan, and I specifically asked him about one currency, dollar rupee, and the rupee I thought was a little was getting crushed, and I thought the dollar was still too high on it, and I made that call. I think that the top is in, that the dollar will start to sell off against the rupee, and I was right.
Nice. We are coming up on the key support zone. He said to watch here at 106.645 on the DXY here. Anything below that, anything in that area, he said was a buy level. He'd be looking to reestablish his dollar king scenario and move back into long the US dollar. So we are right at that level now. Anyone that is looking there. I will say USD, the yen dropping down to that 150 level here, Stephen, even below 150 that he talked about too. So
Citibank is now saying that Apple expects the iPhone 16e will account for 10% of his 2025 units sold.
That's not surprising. I do think that an inexpensive one will draw maybe some Android users over that weren't sure or not, right? That compete, that maybe don't buy the latest Samsung, but were Pixel owners or those other Androids out there.
Well, I think it could be people that are wanting to upgrade to the latest, that have an older phone, maybe with Apple, and this is their way of doing it. You know, a lot of people that have their phones have the latest and greatest and the biggest phone. I always do, because I'm always pushing the phone to its limits. And I'll tell you that I feel that a lot of people are not upgrading their phones. I'm not. I used to do it every year. Now I do it every other year. So I can totally see that.
Yeah, they don't make enough big improvements in 1 year that I've seen personally.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. Steve, another one that was winning earlier, let's see if it's still up, was Microchip.
Ooh, there's a little bit of selling there and Boeing there.
Microchip had a nice day
Bitcoin,
yesterday, trying to hold its earnings. They launched a next-gen Max Touch controller for their automotive displays. This is an interesting one because they're not a company that you hear about a lot, but they are the chip provider for most cars for the displays you see there. They specialize in technology like OLEDs and micro LEDs to enhance aesthetics and functionalities. They talked about some of the challenges as displays are getting thinner. And increased touch electrodes create reliability issues that they've created capacity for higher capacitive loads and display noise. So definitely looking good there. They introduced a new line of models there that support displays up to 34 inches. I can't imagine you need a 34-inch display in your car, Steve. But they are the leader in that. They actually are looking pretty good today with the announcement of this, and this specializes in 20 to 34-inch displays. So,
I think cars will have displays on the roofs eventually, right?
well, right. When we're not driving, while we're still driving, I don't want to see the guy next to me watching the latest NFL game as he's driving down the street yet. It still worries me. We're a little bit away, but yeah, and it's more about.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think you'll be driving in the future. I think that the car will be your seat, and the front two seats will not be facing forward; they'll be facing backwards, and the back two seats will be facing the other way. And I think there'll be a table in between the four of you, and you'll be able to play games on a board and the screens. You won't even need to watch it, and you won't even need to watch the road anymore. It'll be just automatic driving.
Yeah. I don't know if we get to that.
I remember talking about when cars.
Well, I just think I think it's going to go more the other way, where things are going to go smaller, and it's the individual units that drive you more like almost like smart cars, because of the fact that they'll be, more to get you to point A to B than they are for the luxury that we see now. We'll see.
I think people want luxury in their vehicles. I think you're seeing that now, right? Nicer leather seats. You're seeing bigger screens. You're seeing Apple CarPlay. I mean, we're already seeing that. Look at Waymo's vehicles. They're ugly, but they're boxy, right? And it's about the inside, not so much the outside.
Waymo's are mostly two-seat cars. That's why I'm putting it out. The ones that are out there so far are mostly two-seaters at the biggest.
Yeah,
Waymo is 2 seats. The Tesla's looking in their smaller cars to do it. We'll see how that goes. I think it will be an interesting one. For me, if the cost of driving comes down dramatically because of all these auto driving and everything else, then we'll see. We'll see how that all works out. We are looking at the markets here. Ticks down about 500, down 1725, advanced decline. We are just seeing a slide across the markets here today. QQQ now down 40 basis points, SPY down 42 basis points, the Dow down 60 basis points, and the RUT down 70 basis points. So definitely seeing that. And again, we're not seeing crypto. Bitcoin stalled at 98. Gold stalled out at that 2940 area. Silver has broken back across the 33 threshold here, so we are seeing that continue to move up.
Earlier today we saw that they were talking about 6,000 IRS workers would be laid off. They're now changed that number to 7,000 IRS workers.
Wow. Steve, you mentioned a firm. It doesn't seem like that news of the partnership is going that well. Now down on lows of the day, down 2.32%. So a firm getting hit here on that news of their partnership there.
Yeah, I'm not a big on buy now, pay later.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's not my thing, not my jam. Well, it keeps going up though. Baba keeps going up, so we do see that now.
Man, Solana gets
Almost
spanked there.
14%. Baxter holding up pretty well here, up almost 7.2%. NXPI still holding up pretty well. PDD holding up. Lamb Research. So we're seeing a lot of the early morning ones actually holding some steam. Devon Energy up 2.42% so far. On Semiconductor up 2.58. That is moving to the upside here. So we are seeing some of the specialized chip producers getting a little bit of love here today.
Here reports that President Putin of Russia has held a phone call now with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Oil. Don't think for a second that the Ukraine is not being talked about in oil. Putin now thanking the Saudi Crown Prince for hosting Russia and U.S. talks. So things might be getting
down by Garmin here today, about 3% here after that big move up yesterday. So Garmin moving down to the downside a little bit here. As we talked about, Trade Desk continuing to slide here. Lows of the day, 95.31 a few minutes ago. Another one continuing to slide today is Celanese. They had poor earnings yesterday. I saw a lot of downgrades. I think I have that here for everybody.
ECB now reporting more losses for this year and possibly next year. Oof.
And here you go. You can see the big move downs on Celanese price targets. Beard from 110 to 67. Citi from 76 to 58. JP Morgan 92 down to 54. Wells Fargo 75 to 55. Deutsche Bank 85 to 70. So still getting hit hard after their earnings yesterday is Celanese here. Yeah, definitely still getting beat up. Another one still getting beat up after earnings yesterday were bad. AXON Enterprise, Exxon down. It's the largest drop they've had in like 2-3 years here. They had been on a nice uptrend here, but you can see definitely moving now down to the downside here at 537, down almost 10%. I did have some information on why they were dropping.
So much news this morning. I think that the markets seem to be a little bit wonky this morning here because of it.
Yeah, I think everyone, like I said, I think we're all beat up. It's, and what we're seeing is that the earnings winners, for the most part, like we said, are turning around the second day, right? So they're giving you good news for about a day, and then they seem to fade off. So I think people are a little disappointed because they're not seeing a multi-day move up by much. Palantir now down at 9% here. SMC, like we said, some of the high flyers down, 5.64. WRD, we know, had been a heavy flyer on the news that NVIDIA was investing in them, now down 12.14%. Like I said, Tempest AI down 12.24% here this morning. Walmart has bounced back a little bit here, now only down 6%. So they have seen a little bit of love since the open. But in general, it has been a fairly beat down here this morning. And I don't know that we have really much that's going to change that so far today.
The sell-off in Bitcoin is still picking up. 97,149 now.
Yeah, like I said, we've been pretty
drop there.
Yeah, we've been pretty much range stuck for sure. Solana holding up about 173.12 still, so it's holding up a little bit better here. Some mixed bags across the alts. We see Ripple getting hit a little bit here, down about 1.65%. Doge down about 72 basis points, and Link and BNB down slightly. Big winner.
The Nasdaq selling here is rough here. I mean, we're starting, but Unity Software now up 17.5%. Woof.
Yeah, I wonder what Take-Two has done since there's.
New U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, says he does not see tariff policy causing a recession. Interesting. The fact that he has to say that should speak volumes.
Take two is pulling back here a little bit today, 1.86%. I mean, it got as high as 218.49, setting to or 218.75, set a new 52-week high here, but they have pulled back a little bit here on that news.
NASDAQ really getting slaughtered here.
Tick's been negative 500, negative 600 in general. Advanced decline now negative 2,000. So, yeah, we continue to see it slide down. RUT really getting hit down almost 90 basis points here. Dow Jones has been sort of sticking at that 44,350 level. Has been some pretty good support so far. We'll see if it can hold. 44,350 is what I've been looking at there. SPY lost that 610 handle it had gotten across here and now back down at 609.33. So, and SPY back or testing that 535 support level here. Excuse me. Bitcoin, like you said, right back down at 97K here. So,
oh, wow, here we go. Reuters now reporting that joint Kiev press conference with U.S. envoy Kellogg and Ukraine Zelensky has been canceled at the U.S. request, according to the Ukrainian president's office.
Oof.
Probably why we're seeing this sell-off here.
We do see energy has gone positive here in the Spider Selects. XLE now up 34 basis points. We also saw healthcare. I did mention earlier that was one of the sectors that was looking the strongest, is now up 38 basis points, leading on the day. Biggest loser on the day seems to be consumer discretionary, down about 1.32%, and consumer staples down about 1.16%. So those two are the losers so far. Let's take a look at what is pumping the most on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 1000. It still is Hasbro leading the way, followed by LKQ up 7.66%. Baxter up 7.4%, Lam Research up 3.71%, Devon Energy getting a little bit more love up here, now up 3.45%. Molina Healthcare, I spoke that healthcare was getting a little bit of love here this morning. Molina up 2.37%, West Pharmaceuticals up 2.15%. We know both of those who were beaten down last week after their earnings report, so we are seeing a nice move back by both of them today, helping to give a little win to the healthcare sector. Texas Instruments moving up 2.13% so far this morning. Also seeing Applied Materials up 1.94%. So we got a few things moving up. On the other side of that, biggest laggards on the day, EPAM Systems down about 13.25%. We've talked about Palantir now down almost 12%.
Yeah, I was getting rid of
your favorite getting hit here. RCL down 9.72%. I'm going to pull up that chart briefly here before we get into our man Bubba. Todd Horowitz, I see, is ready to enter the discussion here this morning. Steve, it closed the gap. Are you a buyer at RCL down here?
Probably under 200.
Under 200. Wow. Okay, so you have it coming back towards that 200-day MA, filling another gap that it started in November.
And I can tell you that RCL has given me 5 free cruises, so there's something going on there, right?
And I will mention, you talked about that during COVID, and we followed that very much on theirs. The more that they were giving away or offering you discounts, we could see the stock price almost immediately get affected by that. So we'll do it. Well, let's bring them in. We have coming to the stage our man Bubba. Todd Horowitz, how are you doing today?
What's up, fellas? Look who's back. Look who's back.
Hey, Todd, how are you? You haven't seen him since he lost all this weight, I don't think, Bubba.
No, he's a whole new man. Or half a man, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you. Maybe we'll go have some drinks in Vegas. I'm going to the Bitcoin conference in May.
Nice. Well, I'll be here. Come on out, baby. Where are you staying at? Where's the event at?
At the Venetian. Nice. Yeah, so we'll be down there. All right, let's get right to it, Bubba. I know you're outspoken. I know you love this president, so talk to me a little bit. We just saw where U.S. and Ukraine are canceled, and they're not going to have nice talks, and Ukraine's in trouble. What's going on here?
Well, I think Ukraine is in trouble, and again, so Zelensky's a crook. and has stolen millions and billions of dollars that it was aided by Joe Biden. So, I mean, we can certainly look at that, and certainly, Trump favors Putin just in general. And I think that, again, unless they're going to resolve it to Trump's favor the way he wants it, then he's going to continue to keep the pressure on them. And we've given them, how many billions of dollars have we given Ukraine over the last 3 years?
And I think, you talk about it from the perspective of Trump telling Europe they better start to get their defense departments up and running because it could be a little more nastier than normal, right?
100%. Listen, that Trump is an American, and he is not a foreign aid guy that wants to be giving our money away to other countries without their support as well. And I'm in full agreement with that. Again, I'm a big believer that we don't need any of the other countries in this world. We can be very self-sufficient ourselves without. And I think it's time that our tax dollars started going to taking care of the United States and not everywhere else in the world. And I'm a big fan of the tariffs. I'm a big fan of it all.
Yeah, but what if I were to tell you that in the 1930s, though, with that protectionist policies, created a depression?
Listen, depressions come and go. We've been in them. We've had more than one.
Yep.
It's not a big deal to me one way or the other. I believe that we're in a recession now. You can tell me how great everything is, but when you look at the bigger picture, if you're in, let's say, if you make 100,000 or 150,000 or less, you're struggling from paycheck to paycheck just to live. Okay.
Right.
And you can see that by the participation in markets in general, because we don't have a lot of volume. So that means that the retail trader has been very non-existent in the markets themselves. And I think that, the high prices from eggs to beef to everybody, who's buying it? That's the real problem. People are struggling, and wait till the debt comes due. And we have a lot of debt coming due right about now for a lot of American citizens. How are they going to live? How are they going to get by? Believe me, okay, the middle class is who supports this country, and not the wealthy, not the poor. The middle class are the buyers, the shoppers. They support every economy. And when you destroy them, which they've done a good job over the last 4 years, it's a problem. And there's going to be some heavy heat here until, we get the drill, baby, drill. Because of our biggest problem in this country, in my opinion, is that oil is way too high. And we're selling our oil elsewhere and buying from OPEC. So we're getting screwed on our side versus just using our own oil, bringing the prices back down to where they were, which should be about $35 a barrel for crude oil, which would bring the inflation dramatically lower and make the average person be able to afford a reasonable life, not a luxury life, but a reasonable life.
And let's talk about that. I mean, yesterday on Air Force One, Trump was saying, hey, let's go step foot in Fort Knox. Let's go figure out whether or not there's gold in that sucker. What do you think? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this before, but it is my opinion that there isn't enough gold in the world to cover the amount of paper that's been written on gold. Okay?
Right, that's true.
And the futures markets, the ETFs, I believe that, there may be some gold there, I'm sure, but I don't think there's as much as we think. And I think that, you now have a Treasury Secretary in Dissent who's not only a gold bug, but a crypto bug. So, yes. Again, I think you're going to see, I believe that they would like to get back on the gold standard and get back on having actually a backer.
But if we don't have enough gold to cover the gold standard, this is going to cost?
Well, but you've got gold and silver, but you can actually make the currency really worth something. And instead of letting the Federal Reserve continue to devalue our dollars, okay, the Federal Reserve is a cartel. They are a group of criminals, in my opinion. Okay. That don't take care of the American people. They take care of the banks. They take care of themselves. Where else could you be in a business that you can lend out to your heart's content, make billions of dollars, and if you go broke, okay, the American citizens will bail you out? I'm not a fan. Okay. And I think the banks are dramatically over leveraged. I think that you're going to see another repeat of 2008 because I think we're in that same position. And if you're watching it and if you're listening, some of the banks are starting to have trouble. They do not have enough assets to back up. And you take the gift that they just got from the Federal Reserve. If you go back to September 18th, the 10-year notes were 3.5%.
Yep.
Since then, the Fed has cut 100 basis points. And remember, those who don't understand, the Fed funds rate is not for you and me. The Fed funds rate is what the banks pay to borrow money from the Federal Reserve.
Right. And that
So
discount
now,
rate's getting crazier and crazier, I think, right?
well, now the 10 year is 4.6. So
That's right.
we've lost 110 basis points as a borrower. The banks have gained 210 points as a lender. So all that.
But then why did we then? Okay, if that's the case, then why didn't Warren Buffett just dump all the stocks in the banks, particularly Bank of America, BAC?
You know, Warren Buffett has a whole special deal. You know, if you were going to be the lender of last resort, which he will be to them, just like he was for Goldman Sachs in 2008. Okay.
It was his quickest trade, quickest billion he ever made was Goldman Sachs.
Sorry?
The quickest billion he ever made was Goldman Sachs.
I mean, and he got pref stock too with interest payments. So, you know, he's in a different position. You know, it's the old story, guys. If you owe the bank $5,000, they own you. If you owe the bank $5 million, you own them. And Warren Buffett owns the banks. I mean, he's got the power to do whatever he wants. And who are they going to come to? They're going to come to Warren Buffett. But his position is not as bullish as it once was either generally. And again, I think he's waiting because I think he believes the same thing, that there is a little bit of a meltdown coming down. Now, all we've watched for the last, 6 months is a battle between the bulls and the bears trying to figure out direction. We've made a couple of attempts and a crack of new highs, but we really haven't broken out and skyrocketed. Not that we won't. I mean, we certainly could. You know, whatever I'm saying today doesn't mean that it's going to play out tomorrow. Right.
I mean, absolutely.
You go back,
and I do want to point that out to our viewers is when we give these macroeconomic looks at things, it takes time. That's why Steve says he's not beating the table today. Bubba's not beating the table today saying tomorrow this all happens. This is going to play out over time. You need to watch it evolve. As Steve always talks about, we play the hand in front of us is the most important part. I brought it up with one of our educators yesterday when I was driving to D.C. this weekend in that ice storm. I felt like I was watching people on the markets. I had people, regardless of what was going on in front of them, that were just driving as fast as they could down the right or left of me. And then in 2 minutes, I saw them off the side of the road, the same way I see traders wrecked. So make sure you're listening to these two legends. They've been doing this for 30, 40 years each. That's why they're still in the business.
Feel old there, Howard.
Sorry, but I got to point it out because we're seeing too many new viewers, too many new investors that don't understand it's a bilateral market, right? It moves up and down, and you play the hand in front of you. And right now we have a very turmoil time, right? Times of turmoil. There's a lot of volatility in the market. What's up yesterday is now usually down today, right? We're seeing these mean reversions everywhere on both sides of the thing. So we want to tell our traders to make sure they're being a little bit more cautious, but that they're keeping an eye on the news and they're keeping an eye on these bigger picture items that are going to change how the market plays out over the next 6 months.
Screw the news. News is worthless. It's already old.
Charts don't lie, right? Charts don't lie, Bubba.
Is that not true? The news plays out in the chart before you hear it on TV.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's change subjects. Let's get back to one of Bubba's favorite things is gambling. It's why you're out in Vegas. Let's talk about it. We just heard from DraftKings CEO a couple of days ago, and I totally agree with him. He said, look, the money coming into gambling is going through the roof. He said, but it's not an investment strategy for your life. And we all agree with that. But Bubba, let's talk about DraftKings a little bit. Let's talk about gambling. Revenue going into gambling is literally exploding. Are you seeing that same thing out in Vegas still?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, they just had their biggest Super Bowl ever. Okay. Look, gambling is a part of it. Once they passed PAFSA and gambling became front and center and is illegal, I think, in 40 states now or 38 states. Some states it'll never be legal in, like California and Florida, because the Indian reservations run those. But it's big for everybody because they give away a lot of spiffs. You see it advertising. Every major sports organization and franchise has something to do with gambling. Yeah. Again, but one thing we have to remember as an investor, okay, gambling profits are really limited to about 5% per annual growth because their business is based on basically they're the guy in the middle who's collecting a fee to run their business. Okay. Right. So they can make bigger profits, but they also would have bigger loss. At the end of the day, if you asked any bookmaker, okay, or any organization, if we guaranteed you 5% or 6% a year, would you take it? And they would all take it because that's the number they're looking for. The bookmakers, DraftKings, FanDuel, any casino out here, they're not looking to gamble. They're looking to get as much money on both sides of the equation and just take their commission. Very similar to a brokerage firm. Okay.
Right.
They're not looking for risk. They're looking for commissions.
Right. But are you seeing more people out in Vegas? Are they at the hotels? Are they drinking and gambling and enjoying themselves, or is it less? Are we back down to COVID levels here?
No. The town is always busy. The town is always packed. And interesting enough, they're screwing more of the gambler, yet the people still come, which kind of tells you the sentiment of the average investor and the average gambler is they're coming out here and playing blackjack at 6-5 when the odds should be 3-2, but the strip is all 6-5 and has been so for 10 years. They've added a third zero to the roulette wheel, but people are still.
Did they really?
They're still packed.
Wow.
Well,
I didn't know that. They added an extra zero to the roulette.
Listen, they're taking. The town Vegas itself went from when the mob ran it. It was much better because there was a lot of freebies. You could get a lot of deals, and all they cared about was the gambling handle, right? Yeah. Now they figured out they can make money in every department, and they are not shy about charging in every department. Okay, they're not. Yeah,
it used to be that you could go to Vegas for inexpensive, great meals, and now they are, a drink.
Now they're really expensive.
Yeah, it definitely changed.
Yeah, so let's go to the next level of what you like, Bubba, and that is your trade strategies. Let's talk about your trade company itself, Bubba Trading. Tell us a little bit about what you do and your clientele and how you can help our people.
Well, we do a lot of strategies, and again, it really depends on the individual, and you also have to be flexible, as you guys have been talking about, as to what the markets are showing you and what the markets are telling you. But I think one of the biggest things, if you're an investor, you're not a trader. Investors are investing and traders are trading. Now, you can do both, but you can't mix the two together.
That's right.
And I tell all investors, we teach people how to hedge their overall long-term portfolios, and I can hedge it down to a mathematical certainty. But if you're an investor, whether you're hedging or not, you shouldn't be looking to trade in and out of your positions, because one thing we know for a fact, no matter what I think about the market in the next 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, it doesn't matter. In history, the markets have gone up 8.5% year over year and 10% year over year since 1950. That is the average. So am I going to try to beat that average by trying to be in and out of the market? No, that's not what I want to do. So if I'm investing, I want to continue to build my nest egg and compound that portfolio by staying in the market. Okay. Now, when you get to the trading side of the equation, it's a whole different thing. You have to measure risk. You have to be in and out, but you also have to recognize. Here, I'll give you a perfect example. I trade live every morning with my members for an hour. Okay. In the last 8 trading days, we've made 4 trades. Okay. In 8 days, 4 trades on a 4-minute chart. Okay. On 8 different markets. There's been 4 opportunities to make money, in my opinion. Okay. So again, you have to be willing to change the type of strategy that you're using if you're investing on your own or trading on your own. You've got to say, what is the best strategy in a market that is extremely slow with nothing going on, which really, as I said, all we're really seeing, forget about that the Nasdaq's down 220 as we're talking right now. It's still stuck in consolidation. It's not going anywhere. It's not breaking down. It's not like you got to run in and sell or panic out. But there are strategies to use. I trade futures, options. I trade everything, right? If it moves, if it's liquid, I'll trade it. I think that you got to recognize that right now is the time to use options and to actually be selling spreads, selling premium, because the risk that you have to take to make bigger positions is not in your favor right now. The markets are too stoic and too stagnant and don't really have enough movement to allow for the bigger move. So the best part is to sell spreads on either side of the market, whichever you read in your chart. If I were looking right at the Nasdaq right now and you said, hey, you got to make a trade right now in the Nasdaq, I would sell put spreads right now because I would assume a little bounce is coming.
And when you look at options, the hottest commodity right now in the world is options, and it's the 0 DTEs. Really wasn't meant for that, right? We were never meant to be playing daily options. It was meant to be hedges. It was meant to protect your positions. Options, right? The option to buy or sell in the future. I think that you're right. The spreads are big right now, selling calls and selling puts because of where you think the market's going to go. Those strategies are very good. And how does a person sign up for your class to take your class, Bubba?
Well, they go to BubbaTrading.com, and we've got a lot of teaching classes. We've got a lot of automation. We do some equity portfolio management, which is for trading, creating synthetic stock, which is totally automated. We do some futures portfolio stuff. I do a lot of ratio spreading now, which is, again, one of my favorite trades because I love to use the underlying. The underlying, if you can control the underlying, it's very powerful. Okay. Right. And, of course, in the equity side, it's very hard to control the underlying because the margins are so high. And, again, for 10 years or 15 years, we didn't have to worry about margin interest. It was virtually zero. Well, now margin interest is 9%. So it's a real factor that comes into play right now.
Right.
But so using the equity underlyings is very challenging, but using the futures underlyings, because they give you so much more leverage, you can create some solid ratio trades that win if the market moves in either direction. Okay. If they sit still like they've done for the last couple of weeks, then you're going to lose on your option premium. Right. And that's going to be part of your losses. But at the end of the day, if you get any kind of movement, you're going to have the opportunity to make money on either or both sides. And in fact, you go back the 2 Mondays ago, we had back-to-back weeks of Monday where the NASDAQ got creamed overnight.
Yeah.
We all took off all of our short NASDAQ futures, covered them, made money, and then kept the calls for free because we had already had a locked-in profit in the trade. But again, I'm a big believer in education, guys. I think that too many people go out there and they get a lot of bad information. There's a lot of seedy characters out there promising you billions of dollars with no investment and no risk. And you and I both know that this is a hard business. You're not stealing anything in this business. It takes hard work. It takes an education, and it takes a discipline to say, hey, I'm not going to trade because I don't see an advantage for me. It's a probability model. Just like when I play poker, I play the same way. I'm playing the probability. Okay. Right. I mean, again, if you're a backgammon player or a bridge player, you play gin. If you're good at them, you can be good at trading because they take the same disciplines and know that you're not always going to be right no matter what you read.
Absolutely. So you're telling me that poker and trading is the same thing, huh?
100% the same thing. It's all.
I always tell people if they're a good poker player, they're going to be good at trading because they're disciplined.
If you can put the discipline, right? Yeah. You have to be in poker. You have to be able to fold. You have to be able to lay down a hand that you wouldn't normally lay down if you weren't a good player. You got to be willing to say it, and the same in trading. If you make a bad trade, you got to have an exit point to know that I'm getting out. Okay?
Right.
All you're playing is the probability. And for right now, I'm just telling people, look, watch the Bollinger Bands. Okay. They get too overbought, look for a spot to sell. They get too oversold, look for a spot to buy, because all we really are is range bound trading now anyway.
Yeah, it's mean reversion. And like you're saying, we've been talking about that here. Another thing I want to point out is, again, when you're looking for an educator to sign up with, for someone to teach you these things, you don't want to be going after the guy that's saying, I'm the 0 DTE guy, and you're going to make $1 million, and we make 25 trades in the first hour every day. What I want to hear is everything that you just said to me, Bubba, is exactly it. Is we need ratios, we need asymmetric trades, we need an exit strategy, and we're going to change it up based upon what the market is doing in front of us, right?
100%. You have to be flexible. Now, you can trade one strategy, but you have to have the willpower. If your strategy is not playing out, you have to have the willpower to walk away and not worry that you're going to miss something.
Like you said, 4 trades in 8 days. Most people would, they'll just make a trade to make a trade on a lot of these trading systems that I've seen, pop up on YouTube and these, fly-by-night companies. What you want to look for is something. Now, are you changing your strategy a little bit right now? Are you doing, like you said, more spreads? But are you doing more short-term options versus longer?
I'm recommending a lot more spreads. The actual day trading has been very challenging because there hasn't been enough movement. I'm looking to play what's called the blow-off pattern, a panic pattern. And if we weren't on, I would have been a buyer of the NASDAQ when it was down about 210 and has already rallied back. But again, that's one trade. It's not either way. It doesn't matter.
Bubba, you can always make that trade. You can always stop us talking.
No, it's all good. Again, listen, you know what? I think everybody needs to learn this lesson. The markets are open 241 days a year. There's always going to be another trade coming.
Well, let's talk about that. You're talking about, I had long chats with CME. I've had long chats with NASDAQ and the ICE, and they want to go 24/5, 24.
I think they're going to go, truthfully, I think they're going 24/7.
I agree. Yes.
Okay. I think that I say 2 years or less will be 24/7. You've already got a lot of places that allow 24/5 now.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
But listen, their systems are set up. It's not like when I was on the trading floor, okay, where they needed market makers to provide liquidity. They had to have a back office staff. They don't need any of that anymore. Okay. They can operate overnight with a skeleton crew. Okay. Because all the systems are automated and they're in play. I mean, listen, the markets were closed, not really, but technically Monday they were closed, but during Globex they were trading anyways. So what's to prevent them from trading on Sunday or Saturday?
Right.
Okay. Listen, Bitcoin is the idea that trades 24/7 every day of the week forever, right? Since it's been in business, it may not be busy, but it's always trading. And a lot of other things are always trading. And even though the currency markets are not open to the public trade, they are open because the currency numbers are changing all the time with exchange rates. When people go shopping, when they go to the store, when they go out of the country, they're still trading those currencies. So I don't think it's long until we're 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I remember the days when we were excited about Globex coming on board, right? And
I was never excited. I knew that was going to destroy my career. Okay. Well, listen, I knew the day they went to decimals was the first start to going to automation and eliminating market makers.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I was not a big fan. I hate Globex. I think it destroys the volatility. I liked it when the equity markets opened up at 9:30 in the morning and closed at 4:15. That's what I liked. But again, what it has done for the average trader is it's lowered their cost to trade.
Right.
Okay. It's taken away opportunities. But now, remember, when I first started trading in 1980, okay, a round trip turn for a retail trader was $150.
Yeah.
$200. You had to make 2 points on a stock just to break even. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
and you had to make a phone call.
Commissions now are 10 cents. Okay.
Free.
So you get a lot more trades. But again, there's obviously always a trade-off. But I was not a big fan, and still I'm not a big fan because I still like to be on the trading floor.
Yeah, it's sad when you see what's at the CBOE nowadays. It's hardly even moving over there. There is still traders, but they're not doing a whole bunch. We see Scott Bauer and the boys all the time over there. And it's just not much. It's not the excitement that you had, 10 years ago.
I mean, I like the fact I don't get my nose broke being on the floor.
Yeah, you don't get elbowed as much. That's for sure.
Help to be a big guy, right?
That's why I got hired, right?
Yeah.
Listen, Bubba, I want to say thank you again for supporting for me over the years. You've always been right there, man, and in your opinions, and I love it. So I'm looking forward to Quasar Markets and your Bubba Trading Company, man.
I love coming on. You guys are great. You guys are straight. And again, that's what I always look for, guys, is I want to tell people the truth.
That's right.
I want them to understand and recognize that you aren't stealing anything in these markets. You got to learn how to trade them. You got to learn that this is a job, whether you're doing it part-time or however you're doing it, it's still a job.
Never stops.
It's hard work. It's study. It's understanding and pattern recognition. You said it earlier on RCL, you're waiting for a certain price. You got to wait for it. That's the way it goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
patience, I think, is the toughest thing to teach new traders for sure. FOMO kicks in. We've talked about it with some educators here over the last couple of days. Is you can see it because, like you said, we're not breaking out either way right now. We seem to make that stride. We break a new all-time high by a few pennies, but then we pull right back in. And I'll use Bitcoin as an example. It's stuck between 95, 90.
I got an 85 to 105, but 90 to 105 is good too. Look, we're not doing anything, and you have to be able to recognize that. But believe me, every time you get involved and you make a bad trade, it hurts your psychology.
Bubba, we have a question from online asking you, what's your ratio trade that you trade on? What ratios do you trade on?
I trade 5 to 3. Basically, if you want in simple terms, the futures are 100 delta, okay?
That's right.
And the options, I trade the 50 delta option. So if I'm short the futures, I start out net short 50 deltas with a potential of going to plus 200 if we get a big rally.
Makes sense.
Or staying short 300 if they tank, okay? So it usually is a 5-by-3 ratio. There are some others that I'll work with, but 5-by-3 is basically neutral and is dependent on a big move in either direction. It doesn't matter because you make money on either side. And the beautiful part about that trade is you can carry the short side of it forever or the long side, depending on which side of the futures you are, because all you're doing is rolling the options every week to the next week. So,
and you roll options mostly all the time, correct? You're one of those guys, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, I will listen if I get a big enough move, and I'm like for example, I'm short the Nasdaq on a ratio trade right now, but I was able to roll the call significantly higher and lock in profit on the upside. I still need some help on the downside, but I've taken a lot of risk out of the trade. And the key to remember for everybody is you got to reduce the risk first before you can make the money.
Absolutely.
That's right. All right. Well, we'll see you next week, man.
I can't wait. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us, Bubba.
Thanks,
appreciate it. Steve, let's take a quick look at the markets here as we fade out. And at 10:30, like we said, we have Mark Petrino coming in for the charted market technician. Does a lot of work with Benzinga. Bitcoin stuck at 97.052. Tick is negative about 242 right now. Advanced decline about 24.43. So it seems to be sort of catching some wind here a little bit. VIX has moved back up towards 16 here, Steve. Dow Jones down 1%, RUT down 1%. Do you think the key fire following?
I tell you, one thing I'm following right now is some big call buying just came through in NVIDIA, longer dated calls here. And I think you were hearing from Bubba a few minutes ago about rolling those out a little bit on the NASDAQ, rolling his calls out alongside. I like that trade. I like the fact that he's short. I agree with them a little bit. There's a lot of uncertainty in the markets right now. But I like this NVIDIA trade. I still think I want to stay long on that, and I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yep, I'm still in there, still sticking around with it. We will take a look here at our Solana trade, 172.56. So still staying pretty much in that same 172, 173 level here. Feeling pretty good about that. Let's take a quick look at what is pumping the most here this morning. Hasbro was the big winner before our last interview. We'll see if that's still the case here. Still holding up nicely there.
Yeah, we might go positive here on NVIDIA. If that's the case, that's bucking the trend here on the NASDAQ. Tick now down 227. It's really struggling here. With advanced decline down minus 2,400. But here's what I like about this market right now to the positive side is the Dixie now 106.65. Lows of the session here. It could actually slip even further. If that's the case, I think I like that a lot, actually.
That's good to see. We'll give some breathing room here. I do see that our next guest has stepped into the studio, so we'll get him set up and ready to go here. Mark Petrino, how are you doing today, Mark?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. We got Steve with us today, so get ready. Here we go. I know you were looking at Chinese names. You were all over them yesterday. Did Alibaba surprise you a little bit?
I'm not so sold on this move higher, and the reason why is what I've noticed is that sometimes when earnings come out and they're not as good as they seem at first glance, or they're better than they first seem, you get a reversal over the course of the day. And it tends to start like mid-morning, like right around now, like around 10:30 or 11. And that's because all over the Wall Street, you have these analysts that have been meeting over the last hour and a half or whatever, from 9 to 10 or whatever it is. And they might say, these earnings really aren't as good as they first look. So maybe we should sell. Or they say, hey, these earnings are really good. Maybe we should buy more. So if the earnings are as good as they appear at first sight, my experience has been the stock tends to kind of trade flat over the course of the day, or maybe trend higher over the course of the day. But if you can see here, if I just look at the 1-day chart here, we're well off our highs.
Yeah.
Right. So we got up to about 144 or so, and now we're down to 139. So I would be watching this for a potential reversal. And I think when I would get interested is if we trade back through the opening price. Because remember, most volume trades on the opening and the close. So just by definition, then there's probably going to be some support there. There's a lot of people who sold on the open that regret doing so. And if it gets back to the opening price, they're going to be trying to buy their shares back. So that's going to create some support. But if that support fades, we gapped up, then there could be a trade here on the downside. So as always, you got to let the market tell you
that
what to do.
138 level that Baba opened up at 9:30, right about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Xi Jinping and Mr. Jack Ma himself shaking hands might change that chart up a bit, right, Mark?
Yeah, well, until he gets disappeared and we don't see him in the fourth.
Who knows if this is even the real Jack Ma, or is it really an AI version?
It wouldn't surprise me these days.
Are you looking at any of the other names, Baidu, JD, any of the others for a sympathy play here? It doesn't sound like you trust the rally, first of all, so probably not looking for that.
I kind of, when it comes to the Chinese stocks, I mean, I don't proclaim to be a fundamental analyst, but I just remember years ago where there was, oh boy, I forget the name of it, but the firm I was at had a big position in a couple of the Chinese for-profit education companies. And then they just came out one day and they're like, oh, sorry, it's illegal. We can't have for-profit education anymore in China. Yeah. And then, of course, the stock just went down 95%.
Yeah, right.
This is kind of interesting, though. You got to look for these levels and look at how clear the support is down here. So if Baidu, if this stock gets back down to around 80, let's call it, maybe there's a bounce. A lot of times when something gets to a support level, it rallies. And that's because, let's think about this. A support level is a price where there's a lot of buy interest, whether it's investors or traders. And sometimes you get to support, and when the stock stops going down, some of these people look around and start saying, wait a second, this isn't going lower anymore. Therefore, new buyers must be coming into the market. So I better increase the price that I'm willing to pay. Other people see that and they do the same thing, and you get this snowball effect or a bidding war. And this is why it's very common for when we get to support to rally. And I was looking at ADI actually, Analog Devices.
I love it. One of my neck of the woods up in New England.
Oh, really? I'm in New England. I'm Connecticut.
I'm in from Salem, Mass. So originally.
Oh, yeah. My wife's
you guys.
Big fan of those Salem witch trials, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I don't think happened in Salem, right? Isn't that just where they have the trials?
Yeah, I actually I'm from Peabody, and that is actually where the house I grew up in is from the Crucible, where John Proctor actually lived.
Oh,
no, only male burnt at the witch trials.
Yeah.
I guess I've watched a lot of freaky TV to actually have known that. But
yeah.
Here we see the same thing with Analog Devices. And the reason why I want to point this out is just because it's such a clear, we're talking like within 50 cents, find support in February at the same level that it did back in August. And if you look at the market through the prism of a fundamental investor, interest rates, earnings, margins, so forth, there's no way that you could explain how this could happen. How this company could have the exact same valuation there as it did there. But as traders, we know that psychologically people like nice round levels. And how many people say, hey, if it gets to 198, I'm going to buy it. Or if it gets to 203, I'm going to buy it. No, people say, hey, if it gets to 200, I'm going to buy it. So that's why we get this clear support. And that's what we would call a psychological level. Now, up on the top here, you get the opposite. A lot of times, just like we rally off of support, we sell off of resistance. And this is because some of the people that want to sell, resistance is a large group of sellers, start to worry that they're going to get undercut. They know the buyers are going to go to whoever is willing to sell at the lowest price. So they start reducing their prices. And you could get this kind of a snowball effect of these people undercutting each other.
Right.
So that's why we might be looking at a potential reversal here. Now, on the other side of the coin is the old breakout. We get above the resistance and we stay above it. And that tells us that the people that created the resistance with their sell orders are gone. They've either canceled or they've left the market or whatever. And that could set the stage for another move higher, because if buyers come in, they're going to have a hard time finding someone to buy shares from, because the sellers were all pretty much cleaned out around the resistance level. So that could set the stage for another move higher. But I'm just going to watch this here now over the next day or two and see if we hold above 242 for a day or two or so, then there's a good chance we go into another leg of an uptrend. But if we don't, and it looks like it's going to come back in, it could lead to what we call the old false breakout, where something along these lines, where it looks like it's going to break out, but it turns around and it doesn't, like right away. And false breakouts in and of themselves tend to be good contrary signals. So if you're trading a breakout and it doesn't break out, you should think about getting on the other side.
Yeah, that's a big one that I definitely look at from a technical side. You know, I've been talking it with Tesla, you know, when that 330 was a spot that I was looking for it to fall at, and it bounced off of there. And then I said 360 the same way. The other side of it was a pretty strong resistance. But if it holds at 630 or 360, excuse me, watch for the next run up. So, you know, like you said, I tend to watch for that. Does it stay above that resistance long enough? Then you know, becomes support, turns right into support and continuation play.
Yeah, I think for the broader market, I'm still kind of, I think we're going to get through this resistance that the market's hitting. And the reason why is I was just looking at these sentiment numbers, and we have a very small amount of bullish investors and a fairly large amount of bearish investors. And this is the old contrarian signal. If there's a lot of sellers, what do? They sell their stocks. And when the market runs out of sellers, then the only place it can go is higher. Yeah. And the market consists of different sectors. Well, actually, let's just take a look at the S&P. I look at the SPY to see what that is doing today. Let's see. Yeah, you see how we're kind of, you know, we're testing right against this level here. And this is kind of forming what we call in the technical analysis world, the old ascending triangle pattern. Yeah. And this tends to be bullish. And the reason why is it shows us that the sellers are just kind of hanging tight up here around the 610 level. They're like, yeah, whatever. If a buyer comes to me, he'll sell. But if not, I don't care. I'm just going to wait. But as time is going by, the buyers are getting more aggressive. And meaning they're coming into the market at higher prices. And that makes what we call higher lows form. You know, markets go in these peaks and valleys. And when the valley forms at a higher level than the prior valley, that tends to show some bullish action. And this is all going to come down to the technology sector, not surprisingly. If I look at the ETF XLK that tracks the technology sector, look at what we got there. So this is right at resistance as well. And you can see, like what we talked about before, support at a former support level, resistance at a former resistance level. That's, to me, one of the most amazing things about technical analysis is that regardless of what you're trading or who's trading, whether you're a stock trader, ETF, crypto, bonds, currency, you name it, people experience the same emotions. And that's why we see the same patterns on charts of such different things. Like if we just come over here,
psychology, as you're saying.
Exactly. Just like this is oil, right? Like we just saw ADI, you know, support at a former support level. Well, here's oil. You don't need to be a chart guru to see that there's support around this level here. And that's because whether you're trading oil or whether you're trading analog devices, the people that are doing the trading have the same emotions. And that's what we see when we look at a chart, if done the right way. I mean, there's a lot of mythology about technical analysis. And I understand why, because a lot of the people that do it, frankly, aren't that good at it. And they don't really understand, you know, the stuff that we're talking about right now. Right. They kind of just like try to look for patterns, but they don't really know they don't understand the price action that makes the pattern form, right? If a market's reversing, that price action can manifest itself in a chart as some kind of pattern. If it's a reversal that takes place over an extended time frame, it could show up as like a rounded top or a rounded bottom.
Right. If it Intel right now is a good example of that as a rounding bottom. Intel's definitely been in that formation.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
Intel.
Yeah, Intel is interesting as well. I actually wrote about Intel yesterday.
Saw that.
Not on my website here, but on my Benzinga site. Ooh, look at that. Now, this could be an example of the old false breakout, right? It looked like it was going to break out and go north, and all of a sudden we're just coming right back in. So I would think,
I warned at that 26.30 level yesterday. We were warning our viewers about it.
Yeah. I mean, this could kind of retrace another couple points here. Yep. I think one of the most interesting things about this stock is, there's an old saying like markets have memories, right? And that means that certain price levels could remain important for a long time. So look at this here. This is the 44 level for Intel. It was support from January of 18 all the way to March of 22, so 4 years. And as a matter of fact, this morning on my website, my Substack account there, I wrote about this. This is Celulinase, or I don't even know how you say it.
Oh, Celulinase, S-C-E, yep. We didn't even know what it did yet as of yesterday.
Yeah, so the stock, exactly. So the stock collapses, and where does it find support? The same level that was support in 2020 and back in 2015. Yeah, right. I mean, and also you can see up here this concept of market memory, resistance in May of 21 and all the way to March of 24. So when people talk about market memory, what that means is that a price level that is important can retain its importance for a long time. I mean, it could be months, or in this case, it could even be years. And it's kind of hard to get your head around it, to really understand it.
Yeah.
But charts don't lie, and it's pretty obvious, There's a lot of charts.
You pointed it out. Like I said, Tesla was one you could see, a couple of months ago when it dropped below 380 and stuff. Everybody thought, okay, now it's the buy time. But when I looked at the chart, I said, man, I'm looking at this 330 spot as the full retracement back to where it took off from. And again, went much further back and started to look at where history was pointing. And you could start to see some levels. Do you think Palantir is one you start to look at that?
Yeah. You know what? Do you mind if I share my screen?
Absolutely. Go for it. I'll just stop sharing mine and go right ahead.
I like Palantir down here. I think under 100 was kind of nice, to be honest with you.
All right. I don't see it. Am I doing something wrong?
I can add a stage. It's on there.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah. So I see better with the white background, but here's what we were just talking about: the Celulinase.
It's Celulinase, but you guys.
Celulinase. Yeah. What do they do?
A lot.
They make
chemicals,
coverings for paints, and then food additives. So I don't understand how those two work together, but the two major things are paint for automotives and additives to food.
It's a chemical company, yeah.
It's pretty frightening if you actually think about it, right? What if they get something mixed up with the factory?
We're gonna hope not.
All right, so I'll tell you my thoughts on Palantir here, and I think this is probably a good idea on the short side here, and because it's just we had this gap up, and one of the reasons we saw like why we get support is because you get sellers who regret selling when the price goes higher, and they tell themselves, hey, if it gets back to my price, I'm going to buy my shares back. That's why support can stay intact for a long time. When you gap through price levels like this, meaning that there's no trading, well, if there's no trading, there's no one who sold, who's going to be remorseful, who's going to be trying to buy on the way back down. Right? So this is the old saying on Wall Street, is that gaps tend to refill. So if we get a little bit lower, we take out this 100 level. And again, that's the psychology, just like we saw before with the $200 level of ADI. This is the $100 level. If we break this support, my chances we get a pretty rapid move right back down to around 83. It's the old refill the gap.
The elevator down, right?
Yeah, it works on moves that are fast too. I mean, it's not the same as a gap, but it's the same principle, right? On this particular day here, Palantir made this big move higher, up 10%. Now, it ripped through these price levels so quickly that there's just not a lot of time for there to be this big concentration of remorseful sellers who are going to be trying to buy back. So you get your fast move up, you spend some time consolidating, and you reverse, and then you get back to those same price levels coming in the opposite direction, and you gap or you fall right back through them. So this could continue, and my target would be down around there, former resistance level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what time frame would you put on that, Mark?
Probably a couple of days if the trade got triggered. I mean, let's see, what's today's low? Let's take a look at the 1-day chart to see what today's action has been like here. Yeah, so it did get as low as 96. So let me go back to the longer term here. And you may want to wait for it to take out today's lows before you get in. But, these gaps could refill pretty quickly. So I would say if the thesis is right and this does head lower, we're talking maybe 2 or 3 days.
Nice.
I mean, that would be my take on it.
And if it breaks 110, would that invalidate that sort of setup?
Yeah. What I think a big problem that a lot of traders have, not just newer retail investors, but people try to get the exact top or the exact bottom, and it's just impossible to do. There's this old saying, right? The only people that can get the top or the bottom are liars, and people get too caught up in like buying at the exact bottom or selling at the exact top, and they lose focus on why we're here. And the reason why we're here is to try to make money, right? So I think if you focus on the equity of your account, if you have all your positions on a spreadsheet or your banks in your bank or whatever, or your brokerage account, and you just focus on that equity, your job is to make that increase every day. And I think if you focus on that, it puts you in a different mindset of like, all right, well, I'm going to just try to catch the fallen knife, I'm going to try to catch the bottom. I guess this is it. I think you're much better off thinking in the mindset of you have your setup, which means pretend you're at a race and the starter's like on your mark, get set, but they haven't said go yet. So this would be a setup here now, because just what we talked about, it's had a big gap down, it's coming in, it could refill the gap. What would the go signal be, right? Some people might say, well, my go signal would be if it closes below 99, then I'm in. Or some people might say if it takes out today's low around 96, then that's when I would get in. And that would probably be the way I would approach this, because 96 to 83 is still a pretty nice move. You don't need to catch to the top, right?
Don't throw away the baby with the bathwater, trying to catch it. And what I always say, only one person can sell the top and only one person can buy the bottom. That everybody else is in a gray area in between, right?
Yeah, they're the lucky ones. Let's go take a look at Microsoft, because I think this is an important thing to watch. I think as long as Microsoft holds, and we had a positive day yesterday, so here's the 407.50 level for Microsoft. Yeah. As long as Microsoft is above this, I'm going to stay short-term bullish on the market. And I think that the tech sector eventually, I'm not saying it's going to happen today, but maybe over the next couple of days, the tech sector breaks the resistance we talked about. That's the XLK ETF.
Yep.
Right. So you can see we're testing resistance, selling off a little bit. But if Microsoft holds, my guess is that this goes higher, and then that takes the S&P higher.
So I'm going to ask you a question, Mark. As a CMT Association member and Mr. Technician himself, how much does news play into your theses as you're investing as well?
Not very much. I often tell people that if I was on some tropical island somewhere, I had access to my charts, but I didn't have access to the news, I don't think my trading would really be that much different. In terms of like trading the broader market, the only thing that really moves markets, you see, the media, if you put on the media, they're going to every day, they're going to be like, oh, well, the market's down on this, the market's down on Doge, or it's down on the dollar, or it's down on that, or what. They have to put some kind of a reason to it. Now, as a trader, I would just say, well, the market's down a little bit today because we got to resistance and we're seeing a little bit of selling off. But things
no one likes that answer, though. When I give that to Steve in the morning about Bitcoin, I get yelled at. And I'm just kidding.
Everyone's got a different style. You got to do what fits your personality. Right? And so if it affects interest rates, then it's going to affect the market. So that's one way to look at it. But I think people really do, like the CNBC and a lot of the people that come on there, I think they do more harm than good for a lot of people, because they, like if the Dow Jones is up 30 points, that's nothing, and for someone to come out and say, well, the Dow Jones is up 30 points because the dollar is weak or whatever, whatever the news du jour is, I think it gives people kind of the wrong impression of what like really goes on in the real institutional trading world.
Yeah, I mean, I was there, and they push FOMO on everybody because of that. You know?
Yeah, and it's entertainment. That's what you got to remember when you watch the news.
But without volatility, without liquidity, we wouldn't have a market, though, right?
Exactly. So the savvy people should embrace it. Well, I should say the savvy people should embrace ignoring it.
I like that. Oh, I want to put that quote up there. Mark Petrino says the savvy people should embrace it, ignoring it. I love it. I love that.
But it does, like I used to have an assistant whose fiance's father lost a lot of money. He retired, and he wasn't like a super zillionaire, but he had a couple $100,000, and he would just watch CNBC every day and just try to trade around it, and he ended up basically losing it all. And that's why we got to talk about the education that you guys talk about, and that I talk about. It seems like trading is the only profession in the world people think that they can just show up on day one and know what to do.
I can tell you they don't.
That's because they look at YouTube and everybody tells you can. There's 800 people telling you how they've made $1 billion today trading 0 DT, options.
Yeah, like you can't become a plumber in one day. You can't become an electrician in one day. It takes a while to learn. And a big part of, you can learn all the charts and the patterns and so forth. And maybe there are some analysts out there that are worth listening to. But a big part of it has to come down to understanding how much of it is emotions. I mean, people lose money in the market because they make emotional decisions. And emotional decisions are never good. It's really kind of fascinating, the way people think about money. Someone might want to buy a new dryer, right? And they spend 3 weeks going to different stores to try to save $200. Or they wait, like, it's $1,000 now, but if I wait 3 weeks, there's going to be a sale and I can buy it at $800. But then these same people will come into the market and they'll see something on TV or in some chat room, and they'll throw like $20,000 or whatever sum of money at an idea without even thinking about
Mark,
it.
I'm looking over here at the screens, and I've got someone asking, Ron Williams is asking 2 stocks for you to look at. One of them is TEM, which is Tempest AI. And the other one is HHH, which is good old Howard Hughes. So those 2, I think he's asking about.
Yeah. Now, all right. So this brings up another good thing to talk about. Stocks tend to have personalities, right?
Yeah.
Every stock acts a little bit different, and it has to do with because the people that are doing the trading are different. As you can see on the chart here, this stock has a tendency to make really fast moves up and then really fast moves down. So it did it there. It did it there. It arguably did it there. And you could say that it's going on here. Now, I would think my guess is that this goes lower. And here's why. One is we're trading at the lows of the day, which means it's trending lower. I don't know. Do these guys have news or whatever? But they're, it's trending lower over the course of the day. There was probably, you see how this level here was support over here. So we broke support and we have a gap down, right? Gaps tend to occur at 2 different places, the beginning of a trend and at the end of the trend. And that's because that's when you get the aggressive buyers, right? Or if it's going up in an uptrend or vice versa. This is the quote unquote smart money. The people that are like, you know what? I don't care what price I got to pay. I want to get into this. I'm just going to go tell my broker to buy it. I don't care. I'm not going to be price sensitive. And that causes you to gap. You close at one price and you open at a new price. This is what we would call our breakaway gap. The next place where people tend to be aggressive buyers is at the end of a trend. And these are the people that are like late to the party, right? The people that have been watching the whole time, waiting to get a better price. Finally, they jump in and you get what we call the exhaustion gap. So we've turned around. Now, this could potentially be a breakaway gap to the downside. So I would think that if I was trading this, I would be on the short side here. And what was the other one, HHH?
Yeah, HHH, the good old Howard Hughes.
What's going on here? Yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
But he's going to make that into a Berkshire Hathaway type corporation.
Interesting. Well, I mean, you can see here we got a clear support level down around 72, right? It was support there, support here. And you can see a couple more lessons here, right? Seller's remorse can keep support intact. There's people that sold at the bottom here, right? And then they go to buy back here. Now this is an example of buyer's remorse turning what was resistance into support. There's people that bought up here that regret doing so when the price goes lower, and they say, actually, I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself here. This is a different form of seller's remorse. So seller's remorse can keep support intact. People sell at the peak and the market goes lower, and then it gets above their selling price, and they say, gee, you know, I made a mistake. If I can, I'm going to buy my shares back at the same price I sold them at. So seller's remorse can keep support intact. It could also make what was resistance become support. And you can see we broke down there, but this level became important again. Not surprisingly, right? We talk about the nice round levels, $75. So we broke through that. Now, I would say if I was trading this, I wouldn't be doing anything now. But if we get down to around 72, which is only another $1.50, that's where I would maybe be looking for some kind of a bounce.
Absolutely.
And you can see here the example of, you know, here's a gap. Then you eventually get back to those prices coming in the opposite direction. And because there wasn't a lot of trading here, there wasn't a lot of interest over here. And we just fell right through those levels really quickly.
Like you said, there's no buyer's remorse.
I'm going to throw one at you too, Mark. One of my faves, RCL.
Royal Caribbean?
Royal Caribbean. That gap got filled there. I think I've been asked a couple times today, is this a buy here?
I would probably, I would probably give it a little bit more, maybe 224. You know, like this former bottom.
Yeah, that's exactly what, Mark, that's what Steve said this morning to the T. I was going to point out, too, I feel very good about myself because I have a line drawn on Microsoft at 406.29. So very similar to your 406.50. So I feel like we're on the right track here today.
It's really amazing how, if you think about it, you know, this company is worth over $3 trillion, right? And somehow it finds these price levels that are within pennies of each other. And, you know, there's always been support and resistance, but I think that, and I have no way of proving this, it's just my opinion, but since ETFs have come along, they've made a lot of these levels much more precise. Like if we go back to the, you know, the technology sector.
And I would also say algo trading too as well.
Yeah. You know, I mean, look at this. This is a sector worth how many trillions and trillions of dollars, and yet it finds these precise levels, you know, within pennies of each other. It's pretty amazing. And there's your, you know, there's your gap up and there's your gap down. All right, what else are we going to look at here?
Well, I think we're going to close
someone asking about Tesla. TSLA.
Okay, yeah.
The old Tesla.
Aaron Scher is asking me about Tesla.
Okay, like that.
My neighbor just got one. I haven't gotten his opinion on it though. He went from a Ford pickup truck to a Tesla, so maybe some kind of midlife crisis.
Ford pickup to a Tesla. Okay, all right.
Yeah, man. This is what he did.
And Mark, while you're doing that, can you tell us a little bit how we can find you outside of here? Where are you stationed at?
And I do have it on the bottom of the screen how you can find his Substack. So I do want to mention that.
Yeah, if you could come to Substack, just Mark Petrino, cmt.substack.com. I'm just trying to get this, you know, built up and information out there. Like this is about, you know, it's kind of a little bit satirical, I guess.
I like it.
You know, here's 10 amazing
I've enjoyed
facts.
it. You've been sending them to me for a few weeks. I've really enjoyed them. They have some great information and they are insightful, but also give you a little bit. It's not too serious. You don't take yourself too serious.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, so obviously people know that elephants are supposed to have good memories. So anyway, my thought is this, right? Someone's sitting at work and they're bored. And it's like, all right, if they could read this for 5 minutes, learn something. And then, of course, we go down to what we've talked about before is market memory. Now, my members on the members page, I don't know if you guys, well, I guess you're looking at my screen, so you'll be able to see it. But, you know, at least once a week, I go over the markets in pretty in-depthly and look for some trading ideas. You know, like last week, we lost our power for we had a big storm up here. We lost our power for about 12 hours, which seemed like it was an eternity. So I just started, you know, looking at like, all right, well, look, here's the utility sector. Let's go through some of the stocks in here. And the biggest stock in the utility sector is NextEra Energy. And, you know, now I didn't make any trades, but this is just kind of what I was thinking here, right? Just, all right, well, you know, if this thing gets back down to around there, 67, that's where we think about buying. Here we could see this is buyer's remorse. Now people buy at the support, and when the price goes lower, a lot of them say, man, I made a mistake. If it gets back to my level and I can sell and get out at break even, I'm going to. So buyer's remorse can turn what was support into resistance. And as we saw, seller's remorse can keep support intact. I think it's really important to understand this. Like Like, just think about this, right? This is Next Era Energy. It's worth $145 billion. It's up almost 2% today. You know, it's like, what happened that changed the valuation of this company by 2%, which really just brings us back to where we were on February 11th, like a week ago, you know. But the only thing that's changed is investor perceptions. And if you see it,
you nailed it. You've nailed it. Mark, thank you so much for coming on and spending this time. I know you're coming back to join us tomorrow, so we're very excited to have you as a regular contributor here on Quasar. What are the last words for the day there, Big Beat?
Thanks, Mark, for being on the show, man. I appreciate all of your love, and of course, being at Benzinga, where I was senior VP as well. And I love all this, man. This is great. I love all the camaraderie.
All right, guys, I appreciate it, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you so much.